Hey, what's going on, everybody? Today is October 30th, 2024. You're listening and watching the Daily AI Show live, and thank you for joining us. Today, it's Wednesday, so what that means is we're going to be talking about all the news that sort of caught our eyes collectively and individually over the last 7 or so days. And yeah, it's just that time of year where the news seems to be picking up again. I don't think there's necessarily any slow weeks in AI. There's a few that maybe have 1 or 2, 3 stories and are easy to pick because you say, oh, okay, these are the big things that are going on, or these are the really interesting things. This is one of those weeks where I don't know, guys, if you feel the same, but it's just like there's too many to get to in the period of time we have today. With me today, I do have Carl and Andy, and I'm Brian. I think it's going to be just the three of us today. So let's dive into some of the bigger stories, but then obviously what we want to do is not just the mainstreams. We're going to talk about some of the stories that maybe didn't make the mainstream that we still think are really interesting in the world of AI. But one of the bigger ones that I felt like came out the last couple of days, and Andy, you had mentioned it as well, was about Meta. So do you want to kind of kick things off there, and we'll kind of talk about what they're looking at?
Before I start, though, I just want to question, are you the AI, Brian? Because you said dive into, and as soon as that phrase happens, I just assume it's an AI.
As long as I don't say delve, we're going to delve deep into the world of this.
Okay.
And then, as I was saying to you last night on a different call, if I followed with imagine a world where, then you would definitely know I was AI Brian and I was an avatar. So go ahead.
Well, someday soon, I predict we're going to see AI versions of ourselves on the Daily AI Show.
Perhaps,
and maybe side by side, we'll see how authentic my avatar looks. So Google, I'm going to talk about Meta's, not exactly an announcement, but they're reporting that Meta is working on developing its own AI search engine, that to reduce its reliance on Google and Microsoft. Google had its earnings release yesterday, and in the earnings call, they crushed their numbers, but not on search. They crushed their numbers because of the Google Cloud revenue. So, and what's driving that Google Cloud revenue? Well, I say AI. So there's a lot of people who are exploiting the cloud services and the compute services that Google has in order to run AI, new AI models and new programs. So Google's doing very well, despite the fact that now there's an increasing number of competitors for their primary search business. So Google is, of course, the major player in search, and it's the source of most of their revenue. Still, the vast majority of their revenue comes from AdWords that come onto the search results page. But despite that, Google has a pretty diverse strategy, and it will be successful in the long run, I think. But as far as who you turn to when you're looking for something, it's going to, I think, increasingly be dependent on which AI assistant you're working with. Because that AI assistant is going to be the one that completes the search for you. And if you're doing it from within Facebook or WhatsApp or any of the Meta platforms, Instagram, for example, if you did a search that was launched from there, eventually it'll probably be Meta's own internal search engine that does that. And so that's pretty big news.
Yeah,
it's going to be a part of their chatbot strategy, I understand. And initially, it'll just provide current events and news to you in the Facebook context and Instagram and so on. But eventually, you might find yourself working with an avatar from Meta's metaverse concepts and asking it for real-time information from the web.
Yeah, I think that's, when I look at this, it's not uncommon, right? It's pretty in line with what we'd expect from Meta. Although an article I read about, I think it was from, this is from TechBilly. I thought it was going to be TechCrunch, was talking about how Meta not necessarily had a misstep, but after 2020, they really did sort of move away. You remember news used to have a more predominant spot in sort of the Facebook, if you will, app experience. And they sort of have moved away from that because of things they got involved in as far as politics and fake data and things like that and censorship. But if you really just do look at the way Facebook decided to go a long time ago, is that they built their own browser. because it made total sense to keep you within the ecosystem of Facebook. They capture all the data. So the difference I always tell people is if you use LinkedIn, and this is weird that LinkedIn does this, honestly, because they should just use Bing and keep you there since it's all a Microsoft product. But if you use LinkedIn and you want to click an external ad or just a link, it takes you actually out of LinkedIn. And it even tells you that, hey, you're leaving LinkedIn land. The problem with that is that for the user side, it might be slightly maybe safer because you're not inside of LinkedIn, whatever. You're going to see the content. When you come back to LinkedIn, it'll refresh the page. And oftentimes what happens is I tell people, hey, when you share links, it's not that people don't do what you're asking them to do, which is, hey, go check out this really interesting blog that you're looking at. It's that LinkedIn kind of sucks when it comes to bringing you back to the spot where you might want to do a follow-up comment. Facebook fixed this years ago with their internal browser. If you're in the app, you'll notice you never really leave Facebook. So you can make a comment, you can go look at an ad, you can do a 2 a.m. buy of that new, vacuum that you've always wanted, and as a 2 a.m. purchase. But when you're done, you're right back to the ad where you left off of. And the reason I bring that up is I realize it's not search. But if you look at that move years ago by Facebook to control the own destiny of the users, it definitely makes sense that we're seeing Meta, Apple, OpenAI, others, that weren't necessarily in the quote unquote search arena, who are now deciding to get into that. And of course, we have Perplexity too, which, while relying on Google's and the other ways of doing search, have put their own spin on it. And so I think we'll see that as well with Search GPT, which I still don't have access to, so I can't really comment on it. But we'll also see that with Meta, like you were saying, Andy. They will all have their sort of overall layer of how they've decided search works within their ecosystem. And it will be different. Even if you ask the same thing across all 4, 5, 6 platforms, you'll probably get slightly different answers depending on what that particular ecosystem is pushing you towards. So yeah, I think it's really interesting, but not shocking at all to me that they would be working on this. In fact, I think it's a really smart move for them.
Yeah, and when you have multi-billions of users, it makes sense to provide horizontal services that keep the customers in your own network.
It's so funny because I don't think much about WhatsApp at all in my life until I'm either talking to one of my friends in Europe or I go to Europe. And then you immediately switch over and you're like, okay, WhatsApp is everything. And you use that platform or whatever. And I don't know, Carl, is it bigger in Canada than you perceive it to be in the US? Or is it kind of the same as the US where WhatsApp is still, while globally a massive deal, not a huge deal in the US?
Okay. Do you
I know
think
I switched on you there. Sorry.
All right. No, it's okay. I was wondering because all the teams that, all the sports teams either I play with or all of my fantasy teams, we all have our own WhatsApp chat.
Really?
So it's pretty big. But I don't know this. I heard in China, WeChat is like the thing.
Yes, I've heard that too.
It's not WhatsApp. So I think it depends on where you are.
Right.
But I think in Canada, WhatsApp is like a big thing for especially setting up groups, groups that because it's encrypted. You're like, well, at least our chats aren't you can take a picture, a screenshot of the chat, but you can't nothing can get into it. It's pretty secure.
Yeah, it's encrypted on both sides, right? That's their whole thing.
But it's so easy to set up. I know there were some times that people invited me on more of training and courses. They invite you to Facebook Messenger groups, kind of. But those are weird to get into because I'm not used to going into Messenger.
Yeah, I find that odd too.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. So WhatsApp's on my front screen, on my phone, it's there. So to chat with.
Yeah.
But Facebook Messenger is embedded deep somewhere. So I'd have to actually dig deep to find it and then remember to bring it up. So I guess it's just uses, but I don't really use Messenger. I use WhatsApp.
Yeah, I was just curious. And it goes back to the whole idea of what Andy said, creating a search functionality across their ecosystem of products, right? And stuff like that. Okay, let's get back to more AI news. Carl, did you have some stories you wanted to bring up right off the top here?
I did. It's not because I was listening to, the various podcasts, AI podcasts, and the one thing that everyone made fun of was Jarvis, like the name Jarvis. Everybody has
From
a-
Google. Yeah.
yeah, Google's Jarvis agent that works specifically in Chrome, so it can, you can go out and book flights and anything that you can do in Chrome. They're trying to do that. Again, I have to give credit to Matt Schumer out at Hyperwrite, because we've seen this way back like 8,
Exactly.
9 months ago.
Yeah.
And
April.
yeah, so I was like, I was thinking, Matt, well, you gotta you gotta go. Like, what did you do? And now you got obviously Google going at it. I thought it was a good dichotomy of what Anthropic did, where it's giving you computer use, versus what Google's doing is like, well, no, we only want you to play in the browser.
Right.
So
In Chrome. Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting what the play is. So I'm not sure where. I think, like, from a Google perspective, it's probably easier to get people to use it because everyone's on Chrome, versus, Anthropic, where it's like you have to run it through an API, so it's not everybody can use it.
Yeah.
You actually have to know how to set it up. So yeah, I thought, but every single company now has some sort of, they use the term agent. I feel Google's agent, quote unquote, is going to be more true to the definition which I subscribe to in terms of agent being able to do things on your behalf, versus something like a Microsoft Copilot, which I still think is a glorified automation.
It'll be interesting in Chrome. I agree with you. And this also brings up another story, which was that from that same earnings call that Andy mentioned that happened just yesterday. So this is very recent news. Google said that their CEO said that you really won't see anything from Project Astra until 2025. And there was some maybe hints that some of that was going to come live this year. They said, no. We're really hoping to bring that to everybody in Astra. So, okay, you've got Project Astra, which they announced with highly, highly edited, produced cherry-picked videos, right? That showed you what the potential was. And just for people's memories, they had some stuff where they were putting on sort of a newer Google Lens. They were walking around the office. It was able to do all sorts of things, identify objects in a room, look at a whiteboard. I don't remember everything that was in that video, but it was very impressive if we were to take that at face value of like what it can do. So now we're saying, oh, okay, this is going to be 2025. The other thing that you mentioned too is about Jarvis. We've seen this come up before. Agents you can't do anything about. Copilot, I don't know, somebody could have copyrighted, whatever. How is the term Jarvis and related to any AI, at least in the States, not copyrighted? It's shocking to me that anybody, I know it's not really news, but it did come up in my mind. Like, how are they even able to use the term Jarvis? Because it's clearly a take off of what has been the Marvel universe and in movies, and very, very much part of the Iron Man story and in lore and stuff like that. So it's interesting to me. It's like, yeah, sure, we all know what you kind of mean. It's like a heads up display personal agent. That's what we think of when we think of Jarvis, this always on, ready to help us with whatever we need. Jarvis, great. How are they legally allowed to use the term? It's kind of shocking to me. I know it's not news,
Well,
other stuff, but
I think it's as simple as, if you're going to trademark something, you have to demonstrate first use. And who has agents out there that perform like the movie Jarvis? And it's not likely that somebody could have just sat on that. Even the producers of the movie, they wouldn't have been able to sit on it unless they were actually producing something that was an application of AI with the nomenclature Jarvis associated with it. So I don't think there's a real problem there.
I did see Marvel take, so I was just doing a quick Perplexity search and I saw that Marvel took legal action against 2 use cases. So the first use case, you wouldn't believe the name that came up. Do you want to take a guess? It's really old school.
I don't know comics enough. I mean, if it's not common, I wouldn't know it.
Blackberry. Of all the plays,
definitely
Marvel
don't know that one.
Filed an opposition against Blackberry's attempt to trademark Jarvis for their cybersecurity software for cars.
Jarvis. I thought you were talking about the term Blackberry. I'm like,
no, Jarvis.
Okay, I got you. Yeah.
Yeah. So apparently Blackberry tried to trademark. It was hilarious. And then I think we all know Jasper, the AI tool Jasper. they originally they wanted to name their assistant Jarvis.
It was Jarvis early
And
on.
then I think that Marvel sent them a cease and desist letter. So
yeah.
so,
I mean, I don't know. It's odd to me. Anyway, we can get back to the news or whatever, because it's like not really news or whatever. But it is maybe an adjacent news story that's not this last 7 days was when Elon Musk put out the stuff about the robo-taxis and the Robovan, and specifically on the Robovan design. What was it, Minority Report? And that director actually did sue and say like, hey, these are my designs. Now that's probably closer to what you're saying, Andy, in the case of like, that's not maybe trademark. There's a clear similarity between the design that Elon Musk is showing and what was in that movie. And so that's probably a different, not so connected case. But anyway, it brings up the story of, we have these AI companies who are doing big AI things. And I think you can name it anything. You do not have to name it if you're Google, pick a brand new name, and please don't make it something like Bolt that makes it, or Make. Yeah. What was Make thinking when they turned to Make? Because you can't, what it does? It crushes itself. You can't Google it, which makes it a very difficult SEO word. So I don't mind a Project Astra. Thinking to the stars. Astra makes me think of space and space exploration. I like, yeah, that's cool. I like Project Astra. But why go after Jarvis? Like, it doesn't make, you're Google. Why would you even bother? Just go make up your own word. Nobody's going to care. You're a huge company.
Okay, we're on a rant, guys.
I know it's a rant. It's a rant. I know. I get it. All right, what else do you guys go? Go ahead. Go for the news. I'll stop ranting.
You just said, is it ethical to name it after my ex-wife? I was like, oh, I can't. That was
a whole different
just so that was amazing.
Okay, so going to AI news, I want to just thread off of Google. In the earnings call, it was stated that 25% of the production pushes for code within Google, so that's a very big engineering system, 25% is being developed by AI now. A quarter of all the production push is made by AI. Amazing. So what it's an indication of is that there is, in coding agents, the vanguard of where we're going to see these agentic capabilities of AI meet the marketplace. So there's an enormous amount of productivity that's being generated by Google internally in its own enterprise. And so that's also going to be applicable to every enterprise out there, at least in the information technology components of the functions of those companies, which is very important, right? The information technology that supports your company is essential. Let me shift over to Microsoft. And this is an interesting story. You mentioned LinkedIn, which is owned by Microsoft, and Microsoft also owns GitHub. And GitHub Copilot was the very original sort of coding assistant that engineers use to develop code with. Yeah. And they have been relying almost entirely on, because of the relationship between Microsoft and OpenAI, on the OpenAI models to do that. Well, they've just announced that they're going to go multi-model, and they're going to support Claude 3.5 Sonnet and Gemini 1.5 Pro going forward. So Microsoft is moving away from OpenAI and their investment in that. Not really. I mean, they're going to continue to provide those models, and they're going to add, by the way, the O1 series, both the O1 Preview and the O1 Mini. That's going to come in a few months. And so GitHub, a major coding assistant owned by Microsoft and used by, oh, by the way, it has $2 billion in annual revenue. GitHub does. That's a piece of Microsoft, a $2 billion annual revenue. That's how big that is. And now they're moving to multiple models.
Well, in other Microsoft / LinkedIn news, since we're on the Microsoft train, that is big, by the way. And I do think Microsoft, I'll just say really quick on that point, I do like the way Microsoft and OpenAI play together, but also their competitors in some ways. And people think, oh, the relationship is strained. I don't think so. I think the relationship is probably as strong as ever. It's mutually beneficial for both companies right now, for them to both have things in common as well as also forge their own path. So anyway, that's my point on that. But what I was going to bring up,
that's a good point. I agree with that.
Yeah, with LinkedIn has obviously a big part of that business is recruitment, recruiters, jobs. That's a huge part of it. LinkedIn would like nothing more than to be the ultimate go-to source. And to some might say they are the best at it in terms of finding new jobs, recruitment. If I was to be looking for a new job, I would probably start on a LinkedIn versus an Indeed. Not that I couldn't go in Indeed, or I don't even know if Monster still exists. That's how long
because it has the social networking
Sure.
aspect of it, right? You're connecting to people who are potentially your network of referrals for new employment and validation of your skills and capabilities just by association.
Of course. Yeah. And
That
so
doesn't
now
happen on Indeed or any of the other platforms, right?
they have definitely they have definitely delved into this area before. I was going to say dipped.
AI,
I
Brian.
want to use delve there. They have definitely dipped into this area before of using AI to enhance recruitment. And really what they're doing, I mean, a lot of people don't realize this. You can buy a whole other suite of LinkedIn for recruiters. If you're a recruiter, then there's a whole other suite, just like Sales Navigator. Lots of people don't know it exists because that's not something they currently use as a tool, but it exists. It's a different version of LinkedIn. Well, they've gone into this area before and sort of pulled back a little as early as 2023 and earlier. And now they've come out with a new AI agent to assist with job recruitment. And it's, pretty much what we think here. It's helping recruiters with different tasks, repeatable tasks that they do all the time to try to make their job easier so that recruiters can spend more time, and this is a common thread, right? More time doing the things that make them really good at their job. And we see this theme over and over and over with AI, which is, hey, let me create a tool that takes some of the boring, repetitive tasks off your plate that you've been sort of shackled to by the rules of this job, right? But don't necessarily prove value. There's just something you have to do. And AI comes in and says, well, I could take some of those off your plate. Oh, I have 3 more hours this week that I never had before. What am I going to do with it? Well, hopefully that's now I can go have deeper conversations. Now I can go look for those extra things that, I have knowledge for. So hopefully it's a good thing. I have a lot of friends on LinkedIn who are recruiters, or I've had clients, former clients, who I've helped with their personal branding who are recruiters. So I am like super pro recruiters on LinkedIn, and I want them all to succeed. And I am hopeful, I don't know, but I am hopeful that this newer AI agent this hiring assistant is going to be a huge boon for them as recruiters, and obviously not something that's going to take away their job. Because like anything else, any job out there, there's a lot of built-in 20, 30 years of knowledge that goes into being a great recruiter. And I would hate to see that get stripped away. So hopefully LinkedIn is trying to support that through this AI hiring system. We will see, but that's my goal with that.
Do we want to see the video
of what?
The hiring assistant?
I mean, we can if you have it queued
up.
Yeah,
I do.
I haven't seen it.
It's kind of funny because I was watching it and I was like, the first 45 seconds, I was like, you've just wasted 45 seconds of my time. And then it gets to the point and I'm like, you haven't mastered the slick videos that Google and right. They're like, they get to the point, but this one anyway. So I'll play it. Let's see this. But I played it. Do you want me to play the whole video or up to the point that actually makes sense?
Go past the first 45.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for brevity.
Skip the That's probably enough for those people who are listening on Spotify.
Okay. So
it's a musical interlude for the
This
Spotify
is a musical interlude. Yeah, just a little something.
There's one thing that got me though when it said, "Oh, I have 12 candidates ready to review," and I can't remember. I think we had this discussion a while back, or maybe we didn't. I'm confused already. There was this story or something I remember. How did you get those 12 candidates? and what was the criteria? And the first thing is like, did you bias this in location, experience, person? Like, how did the system know that these are the top 12 candidates? I don't know. So that was the thing that kind of got me, because I was like, wait a second, this could turn on somebody's head. Because I do remember that was the big thing of using AI for recruitment, was all the issues with AI picking the candidate or
Right.
selecting, right? Versus everything around the, all the admin processes that go into the recruitment and hiring process.
Well, we'll jump onto more stories here, but the last thing I'll say about LinkedIn, because I was the primary LinkedIn strategist for Scaled for several years, so I do feel like I have an insider sort of knowledge on this. One thing I can tell you from LinkedIn is they repeatedly step on their own feet with rollouts and deployments. It's almost comical if it wasn't more sad, because you just look at how big and how much money they potentially have behind them with Microsoft. And don't get me wrong, LinkedIn has done just fine for Microsoft since they bought it 15 years ago. It's done just fine. But they usually screw these things up. So I'm just hopeful that, again, this is a huge benefit to recruiters to get more qualified candidates in front of them faster, and not, to your point, Carl, putting lower quality there, or not really being as helpful as it could be. So we will see. And we'll may one of these things where we just have to talk to our recruiter friends and find out if it's actually helpful from their perspective, their unique perspective to it. Okay, I haven't really thrown one out here, but I do want to talk about something I saw come up, which is 11 Labs, who we've talked about many times. They are excited to announce the team by Omnivore, a popular iOS omnivore. I know I mumbled that. A popular iOS reader app used by 500,000 globally has joined the company, meaning 11 Labs. This move accelerates our mission to make content universally accessible by bringing its advanced text-to-speech technology to mobile devices. And then they said in June they had launched, remember we talked about this, the 11 Reader mobile app, allowing users to read aloud books, articles, and PDFs in dozens of voices across 32 languages. By joining 11 Labs, the Omnivore team will build upon an existing partnership where Omnivore previously integrated 11 Labs' high-quality AI voices into its reading app. Okay, so basically what we got at is 11 Labs is growing, is expanding. I think this is usually a good sign of a company, not always, but a company that's on some stable ground, which is that they're now bringing in and expanding by bringing in other companies and absorbing them to get niche improvement. So whatever all the Omnivore team was really, really good at, 11 Labs is saying, hey, we've already worked together, but now it makes sense for you to be actually part of the 11 Labs team so we can make this even better. So not sure if you guys had any thoughts on that, but just more or less a small story, but nevertheless, 11 Labs continues to be a leader in the AI voice field.
Yeah, I am still looking for the facility on my phone, which will allow me, while I'm walking around, doing ranch chores, to, open up a web page and have it read to me and summarized for me, like voice wise. And it sounds like the Omnivore technology and 11 Labs together are moving in that direction. But I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I have not found anything that does that yet for me. Like will just automatically give me a voice overview of what it's found on the web in response to a query.
I don't know the answer to that. I do want to say that Jesse, and then welcome Jesse, says that loves the 11 Labs Reader app, which I haven't personally used, but that's good to know. I'm glad to get that feedback. So thanks for putting that in the comments, because I know that is something that I've heard people using. It's not something I have, but I'm with you, Andy. What you just said, I'd rather see in terms of just an easier to use interface, and I don't know if that particular thing exists yet.
Yeah.
What else? What other news?
I'm going to go deep into science now. This one's very interesting to me. So, you've heard the stories about how they can do a functional MRI and actually use AI to interpret the signals that are being non-invasively collected from a person's brain while they're looking at a still image and they can reproduce that image, not with high resolution, but with recognizable resolution. So if you're looking at a picture of a horse, you have the fMRI, net on the person's head. The AI interprets that and presents a picture of a horse, recognizably a horse. Okay. This is from an archive paper that's just published. It's from a bunch of researchers, but they've developed a new system called NeuroClips. This is moving from still image recognition using fMRI to video. So you're watching what the person is seeing in spatiotemporal sequence, right? This is a very big advancement, and getting to the point where you could actually reproduce what's being produced visually in the brain onto a screen outside the person. Oh my gosh. So here, let me just read to you a little bit about this. So the static image generation using fMRI has been possible largely because of deep learning models, right? And they use stable diffusion as one of those in order to generate the images. And that stable diffusion is a kind of model for image generation in AI. And now fMRI to video reconstruction has been difficult up to now because of the problems decoding the sequence of images. NeuroClips achieves smooth, high-fidelity video reconstruction of what the subject is seeing, up to 6 seconds long at 8 frames per second. Now, 8 frames per second sounds very small compared to high-resolution 60 FPS, right? But it's getting closer to the point where we'll be able to actually see what someone else is seeing on your screen. Let's put that one in your pipe.
That is very cool. I like it. I like that you brought in a deep science thing too, because without Jumi here on a typical Wednesday, we don't always get like the deep AI or science stories, because Jumi's usually the one. So I appreciate you, Andy, bringing one up that it's like, again, these are the kind of news stories that are really important, but don't always hit the top of the news feeds and stuff. I do have one that probably will hit the top of the news feed because it is about OpenAI, and I'm just going to share my screen really quick because this is something that should have existed God knows how long ago. And that is just that OpenAI or ChatGPT has finally added a search for their chats. Like, holy cow, this should have existed so long ago. But you can see if Asana, which I've talked about several times, I've been using them in examples. We can see here that there's something that has a result of Asana from 7/19 of 2023. So, and if I click on it, I can go right back into that chat without like any delay whatsoever. I'd have to go in here and see why I was talking about Asana in that particular one. But holy cow, this is something that I have been waiting for forever, is to have ChatGPT search, because it hasn't existed. You've had to use plugins and then they want you to pay. And my initial use cases of it, as you saw live, are very fast and they do go deep. And that was the first thing I worried about, is how far back will it go? Because I don't know, like a lot of people, I have thousands of chat threads, probably thousands at this point. I use it multiple times a day. So it's got to
think how many people are using ChatGPT, and they're keeping all of those chat threads. I mean, I believe that's only true if you're a paying customer, right?
I assume. Good question. I don't know if this is a free. I
have always been a paying customer of ChatGPT, so I don't know. I don't know how to test that other than to create a new account and see.
You guys keep going with news stories. I'll check really quick because I do have another account that I can check that's free. But you guys keep going with other stories, and I'll come back to you on that.
Cool, Carl.
There is one kind of connects to a little bit of my history, like because my undergrad was in criminology and psychology here, so I'm always curious about AI and crime. So this story came from the Guardian. So the UK says the man who used AI to create child abuse images jailed for 18 years, which I was always concerned about. What is the legal ramifications of creating illegal type images using AI? Because there is a defense saying, well, it's illegal. I mean, they just created something that did not actually lead to specific things. Now, but what this person did was he used photographs of real children and then turned it into really deplorable images. But I great outcome, because then this could be precedence used around the world and be like, hey, you can't do this with real images, fake images. It would just be, because I think I was thinking at it from like a defense attorney, be like, yes, morally reprehensible, but legally, what is the crime when you create this, and how is that different from, like, say, any type of other pornographic images that has no real people in it? So this is, I think this is, for me, this is like, oh, this is great in terms of there is now precedence that you can't just create these type of images and have no consequences. There is like things that, are real. Now, here's the thing that also got me. So there is a potential client we recently met with that is in the adult entertainment space. And what was really interesting is the requests, again, legitimate business, nothing like this, but it was more of like, could you use, so they're an event company, so like they host these adult themed events around. So it's like, oh, can we do AI research for other adult entertainment companies, because we want to know where they are and what they do, so we want to grow ours. But then the keywords that are being used, you're like, well, I don't know, because the guardrails set up for all the major labs. So do you open source that, and then how would that work out too? So curious to see how that, in that space, not that there's nothing stopping them from doing that, but it was just a very interesting request, and multiple type of requests. You're like, I don't know, we're gonna have to test that out to actually, like, if this actually works for your business, which that's their business.
Right. Yeah. And right. I didn't run into that. I didn't have an adult entertainment business. I had a nutrition business.
Yeah.
But the reason I'm bringing it up is because we ran into this all the time on Facebook with running ads. There are definitely words you cannot say.
Yes.
If you're trying to run ads as a nutrition business, and they're there to protect people. Yeah. But if you're that company, in our case, we were an online nutrition consulting company. We didn't sell supplements. We were a consulting company. His wife is a dietitian. It was tricky because you could get ads blocked all the time for insinuating diet or weight or things like that were blocked. So not surprised to hear that, Carl. And now that we're moving into the AI space, I think you're right. Like, it's just going to come up more and more.
Yeah.
And, think what you want about the businesses. This is somebody's business, and they are being hemmed in a little bit as far as like the types of searches or AI results they can get without kind of getting slapped on the wrist.
But they have to do workarounds anyway, because, for example, if they do advertise, they just can't, some of the advertisements, they cannot obviously use Meta. They can't, like, it's very difficult for them to use the platforms. But I was surprised that they were able to use Google's ad network, but only to other similar adult themed sites, which that's their focus, which was, I was like, oh, that was sort of like, well, our safe for work ads can be on those platforms. Our not safe for work ads go into these other. I was like, I never, like, they're just describing their business and how they have to work around it is very fascinating.
Yeah.
But also at the end of the day, the things that really got them was like, oh, so I don't have to answer all these, like, all the normal processes of a business. This business has all of it. So it's like all the things that you could automate, all the things that they're repetitive, like, it's just that business. It was a fascinating conversation.
Yeah, that is fascinating.
Yeah.
We probably have about 5 more minutes here before we want to wrap up. Andy, do you have more news stories?
Yeah, I'm gonna wrap with a follow the money segment here.
Okay.
So where is money from the investor community in AI going in the past week? And so let's start with the biggest down to the smaller. The biggest one, Waymo's driverless taxi service raised $5.6 billion. Why? They're going to use that extra capital to expand beyond the few cities that and millions of miles of autonomous driving that they've already done. So they're expanding now, and they've just raised almost $6 billion to do that. Next, just to reinforce the idea that in enterprise, one of the most valid places to apply AI, and probably with the biggest impact on employment in this sector, is in customer support. And a company called Sierra got a $4.5 billion valuation, raising $175 million. Those are conversational AI agents that autonomously execute tasks on behalf of customers. And so you can actually do transactions through these agents, which is important. Next, this is interesting because coding agents are really important, and the engineers who are working with those coding agents will often want to exploit search on the web as part of their system. Now, they can use one of the large language models that has an attendant search capability, but this company, BrowserBase, raised $21 million in its Series A. So that's their very first legit round, if you will, not a seed round. At $21 million, what they do is they provide a web browser, a headless web browser, to apply in code that doesn't require that you operate through one of the major browsers on the web. So we talk about agents and code being able to use Chrome or use Edge or use Arc, but this one is a coding browser, if you will. It's a headless browser that they can put into their code. And then finally, at 8.7 million for a seed round, which is a nice chunk of money, Sapien is an automated financial analyst that integrates with Excel, ERP systems like Sage Intacct and so on, and CRM systems to assist with intricate financial queries. So that's an autonomous coworker that has access to the company's all their CRM and ERP financial systems, and can continuously learn from each query that it does. So a really important area of application, a lot of high value for companies. And this one is moving towards autonomous active agents within that space.
That's really cool. I like that segment. I think we should do more of that segment. Follow the money. I think that's one that is really valuable to see, especially when you think you said it was Waymo, right? That had the 5 billion. And
Yep.
Waymo's
the
Google's
former
company.
is a separate company now, I believe, from Google, or maybe Google owns the majority interest
Like
in it.
Alphabet
But
does or something.
yeah,
Yeah.
but it's the Google's autonomous driving system.
That's an interesting question. Something we'll have to follow up. We'll make sure that gets into the newsletter for this week, whether Waymo is now separate from Google or it's still underneath it, because I just assumed it was part of Alphabet. I have one kind of fun one just maybe to end on. Hey, Carl, real quick, do you have any last ones that we missed?
No, I think the only one was the Apple Intelligence rollout, but then you have to be on a wait list. So I'm like, well, what did you roll out?
I have it. If you had beta, it's not that much different, and it is an improvement in Siri and stuff like that. But it's still not the ChatGPT. So if anybody's thinking, oh, it'll give me ChatGPT function, no, that's still not there. But it's like in parts and pieces. So when they finally roll everything out, we'll talk again about Apple Intelligence, because it's there. This is not necessarily from the last 7 days, but I found it in the last 7 days, so I guess that counts. We've talked about this story before, but it's the music producer Timberland and what he's been doing with Suno. And so I just found this because I didn't realize that he had actually put out this or together with Suno, they have this contest. So I'll just read what it says on the screen, and then I'll play a little bit of the song, and then we'll let it go. But Timberland presents Love Again remix contest. Timberland, the legendary producer behind countless hits, is inviting you to remix his new single Love Again on Suno. Over 100,000 in cash prizes are up for grabs. The top 2 winning entries will have their remixes officially released by Timberland. Showcase your talent. Create now to enter. I think this is super cool. This is a sort of an add-on to a whole show we did about kind of what Timberland's doing. He's not the only one, but he's got this Love Again track, and then we'll play a little bit of that just so you can hear it. And then you can see all the stems underneath it. So anybody that's got the talent, that, feels like they are a producer. Maybe they've never really had all the tools to be a producer, but now Suno kind of gives them that extra tool to be creative. I think this is super, super cool. So let's just listen to a little clip of it.
I don't love you no more. I don't care about you crying on the floor.
So, I mean, it kind of follows that same. It's a very fast-paced song, high beats per minute. What I really love of it is he gets all the way. Let me see if I can just find it super quick. I'll just play this one little, because if you know Timberland, you know this sound. Here it is. That's the Timberland sound right there. That whatever you want to call that. That's how you know you're on a Timberland track, you know. So it's got that almost scratch feel to it. So anyway, I think this is super cool. I'm a super fan of both Timberland and what we have going on with AI and Suno, as well as what Udio is doing. I still like Udio better, but this is super cool. So if you're into music, if you want to just play around with some stems, I mean, who's ever had the chance before to build off of the stems of a official Timberland track and try to create a remix off of it? That's pretty cool.
I think this is where we forget that, like, to me, this is the rise of new type of creator, right? Combining AI with a little bit of what you do. And I think Timberland, I remember his I think either his Instagram post when he was listening to it and like just finding this. I was like, I think something clicked in his mind. You can see that click. It's like, oh my God, I'm gonna create like endless things with this. And I thought that was really neat. And just listening to this stuff, I'm like, I can't wait for other artists to be like, I'm gonna incorporate this, and just it's gonna be a new. I thought it was really neat and some really cool things to hear.
Yeah, I'm with you. I just literally can't wait to hear more of this from both him and other producers that I really, really love. Because I just think it's a cool way to be creative. And, you know, if you watch him on TikTok and stuff, he does live reviews of other producers' songs. And he can be quite critical about it, where he's like, nah, that's not it. That's not happening, whatever the reason is. It's cool to hear inside his brain of how he produces and stuff. It's sort of like listening to a genius work. So anyway, very cool. Didn't necessarily come out in the last 7 days. This contest goes through November 8th. So it is ongoing as of this show, which we're doing on October 30th. So you have roughly 9 more days to get your submission in if you want to put out your remix. And it tells you right here on the screen how to do it. So I'll leave you guys to that if you're interested. Okay, we'll wrap it up there. Thanks for everybody in the comments. Thank you, Jude, for winning the comments of the year with your can you name it after your ex-wife? That made us all laugh. That's pretty funny. Thanks to some of our new folks in here that we haven't seen before. I mean, thank you, Jen, obviously. But we did have some other names in here. Eric, thank you. By the way, Eric brought this up. I didn't want to come back to Jarvis, but this is a good point out. Eric said Jarvis is an acronym. Good call out. I forgot about that. So that may also be a reason why it's not trademarked or copyrighted or whatever the law is on that. So I read it, Eric, but I didn't want to come back on it again on a soapbox for Andy. So we'll leave it there. Have a great day. Hey, tomorrow we have a really cool conversation about something going on in Poland with one of their one of their radio stations, where they quite literally fired people and replaced them with AI. This is one of those very real world, not just pie in the sky, not going to happen, literally is and has happened. And so we're going to talk about that tomorrow and what they're doing, what their reasoning was for it, whether it's going to stay, whether they're going to rehire humans to bring back in those radio host jobs. Very interesting conversation. If they're doing it in Poland, they can certainly be doing it in other places around the world. So it's something we need to pay attention to. Friday will be our 2-week recap show where we'll talk about all the news we missed, maybe more about Jarvis, who knows, and everything else over the last 9 days. So come back for the last 2 days of the week and hang out with us. Thanks a lot. And we will see you guys tomorrow. Thanks, Andy. Thanks, Carl, for all your participation today. Appreciate it. All right. Till tomorrow, guys.